Today's video, I want to talk about Marabou. Marabou is a material we're all familiar with if you've tied flies. It comes in every fly tying kit that you buy, and I would almost guarantee anybody who's tied flies is tied with Marabou. Most starter kits start with some Marabou patterns. It is a great material. It's been around forever. It is a material you don't want to cut corners on. When you buy a Marabou, buy it from a fly shop because the dye that they use for fly tying Marabou is different than craft store Marabou, and it won't bleed. The craft store Marabou will bleed out the colors and stain up the other materials on the pattern you're tying. So you want to get good quality. When you get it, it's going to come strung. You can see where them are all kind of sewn together. They're going to come in little packages like these. You can see I think I counted 51 different colors and UV different treatments and stuff that I've got. So that comes with all kinds. So I'm going to show you guys some of the things to do. So when you get your Marabou, you're going to find some of the feathers are different. It's natural, so all the feathers aren't going to be the same. Some of them are going to have big stems like this, and they're just kind of, if you tried to bend that around a hook, it's just going to bend and break. Then you're going to find some that's kind of ratted looking like this, and you're going to think, man, that's no good. So I'm going to kind of show you how you can try to save that. Then you're going to find some like this that's absolutely perfect for like a palm ring body. Then you're going to find some like these that are good for tails. And then you're going to find some of these that are shorter that a lot of people kind of throw to the wayside. But I'm going to show you guys what I do, and I use it as a dubbing. So first thing first, let's put a hook in the vise. And I'm going to talk about tails. So I've got a hook. Let's find a hook. I'm going to put a hook in the vise, and we're going to talk about tails. So when we tie a Marabou feather in for a woolly booger, Euro jig, a crappie jig, something like that, we're going to have a tail. So that tail that comes out, a lot of times people will cut the end feathers off of a piece of Marabou, and that's what they're going to use for a tail. So they're going to take that piece of Marabou like that, and they're going to tie that piece in, and that's going to be their tail, and then they throw the rest of the feather away. That's fine and dandy, and that works, but I'm going to show you guys a couple tricks in a way to salvage a little bit more material if you already don't know. First thing first, I am going to get my fingers wet. I get my fingers wet, make this thing manageable. Now I can cut my tail piece off, and I don't have a great big mess of feathers. So I can get it all nice and wet, and I can tie that right in. And I don't have Marabou sticking all over the place. And anytime I tie a tail in, I want it to kind of be smooth in the body and not too much. So you can see just that little bit of water, how much more manageable it makes that piece of Marabou. So now I cut that tip off of my feather right here, and it's like, the rest is kind of trash. Well, not really. I can fluff this piece up, and I can make 2 more tail pieces. All you have to do is grab that piece of Marabou, and you just peel it right off of the stem. Just right off of the stem like that. I'm going to throw the other half in the trash. And then I have that thing, and you can see the Marabou where it's got the little piece of the stem left. All you do is fold that back and forth on top until you got it all clumped together. And now you have another piece of tailing material. Just get your fingers wet. You can tie that right in, and it'll look just like a regular tail. So that's a way to get more than one fly tied out of a piece of material. So one piece of Marabou should easily get you 3 tails when you do that. So the next thing we do, we're going to take a hook, and I'm going to talk about making a body for like a nymph. So we can take our hook, set it in our vise, tie our thread. Once we have our thread tied in, you can see a lot of flies, like damselfly nymphs are a really, really common fly to do this way. And when you do them, all you're doing is you're going to take a fly that's got some soft feathers, not big spiny feathers, and we're going to tie in our tail like you would a regular woolly booger or jig. And you'll tie in your tail. And when you do that and you lock your tail in place, you can take the rest of this body of the feather and you just spin it. And just keep on spinning it until it all spins in. And what doesn't spin we're going to pull up out of the way. And when you have that bodied material like that, all you have to do is wrap that body up your hook. And it turns into a perfect body for things such as nymphs and stuff. When you get to where you want to do, lock your thread in, cut it out, you're good to go. So you can use that for a lot of body materials. Now, a lot of people don't know this. A lot of fly tyers I've never seen utilize this, very few anyhow, where I actually use my Marabou as a dubbing at points. So I'm going to take my string and tie it in place. I am going to take my dubbing tool tie my string in place. Take my dubbing tool and tie in a dubbing loop. So now you can take a piece of Marabou like this side. You can take your clip and clip it. Take your scissors and cut it. Put the fibers inside your dubbing loop. Spin your dubbing loop. And as you're spinning your dubbing loop, you're really making wicked body material. I use this on a lot of bait fish patterns. And you can build up a pretty fat body all with those Marabou fibers. And they'll pull back just perfect. You can trim them as you need to. Makes a phenomenal dubbing. So that's another use for it. So now we've went through making a body for like a damselfly, how to get multiple pieces out of a tail. Now I want to show you guys about palmering. So palmering, I'm going to take this big hook that's already got some thread tied on it. I'll tie it back in place. Palmering is where you're making a cool looking body that fins back out of your Marabou. So whenever you're palmering a body, you want to always make sure and have a feather that does not have a big stem in it. I always try to start at the tip of my feather when I palmer, and I want to bend my feather where it goes with the hook. And you can see the natural bend going back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull these feathers back, and I'm going to pop this piece off the top. I'm going to tie that in place. Once I get that tied in place, I'm just going to take this body and I am going to start spinning it backwards. Each time I want to pull them feathers, pieces of feathers, loose and back. Loose and back. Loose and back. Loose and back. Now you can take your hackle pliers and you can kind of do the same thing. And a lot of guys would rather do that because it's not quite as tedious. So when you get back to the point where you're done and you want to cut off, all you got to do is work that thread through and tie off. So now that I got that tied off, I can cut my end piece. And I have a palmered body that I can use. Again, a lot of bait fish patterns. All you do is just pull it, work it away from you, pull the feathers back and keep them all fluffy, and they'll tie off and they'll work just fine like that. So now we've went through a few tying techniques and a few different things that we can do with our feathers. I hate to waste material. So when I get a feather that looks like this and it's all clumpy and I don't really know what to do with it, I will get my dubbing brush, which I have used the heck out of this last week. So I'm going to try to clean up some of it. I guess it doesn't really matter, but we're going to get some of the feathers off. So this is just a gun cleaning brush. You can buy one called a dubbing brush. That's the exact same thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush and I'm just going to brush through that feather. I'm going to do that on the exact same on the other side. Then I'm going to turn it over and work both sides of that feather. And you'll pull some of the pieces out if you get too rough like I just did. But you can see how that feather looked before and how it looks now. I mean, I've just salvaged that feather and made that whole thing a big fluffy feather, all by just rubbing a brush through it. You can use something as light as a toothbrush to do it. Works super easy. So this is a few of the techniques that I use when I tie with Marabou, and a few of the ways to where you can save a feather. When you get feathers like this, you can use them for dubbing. You can peel these the same as you could to fold up for tails. A lot of jigs will use these flat ends. There's really no waste other than the stem in Marabou if you pick through your feathers and you utilize them as you need to. So I hope this helps, and we will see you guys in the next video.